Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Friday again. End of August, September next week. Scary, scary, scary. As always, if you are watching, do please pop a hello in the comments so that I can be very polite and say hello back, because I know my manners. Good morning, Jane. I might be a bit squinty today because we have sunshine. We have sun down in the Shire today. A few clouds in the sky, but generally blue sky, sunshine. Good morning, Jay. Eric is out in the garden, stretched out across the steps, sunning himself. Good morning, Jackie. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to Friday. Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, Christine. Thank you. Yes, Eric is out sunning himself. Pete has a new work computer today, so he's very stressed already trying to get it all set up. I'm going to stay out here. I think it's a lot safer. Good morning, Helen. Good morning, Christine. Good morning, Jackie. Good morning, Emma. Good morning, good morning. Oh, Emma, I've got a question of yours to answer today. Good morning, Kerry. I'll get my phone up. If you are coming in from the Kitchen Witch Facebook group, then it sometimes doesn't show your name if you don't allow Facebook to use it. Bear with me a second, because for some reason I can see it within the group, which is very bizarre. But, you know, that's technology for you, really. Good morning, Kay. Good morning, Emma. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, Karen. Oh, off to the sea today. A little bit jealous. I'm going next week. Good morning, Lou. Good morning, everyone. Bit of a question and answer one today. No particular theme, but I have got some questions from people, various different subjects within witchcraft that I'm going to do my very best to attempt to answer. Jane, yes, technology is a whole new kind of magic to explore. It is, absolutely. Karen's going to the sea for the day. It's a very nice day for it, Karen. So, yes, lots of questions today, some interesting ones. Good morning, Gillian. So we'll see where it takes us. Hopefully I've got the answers that people are looking for. I'll do my best. I don't have the answers to everything. Honestly, I don't. You know, this, however many years into it, nearly 30 years or something like that, into this pathway, and I am still learning on a daily basis. Be boring if we didn't, really, wouldn't it? So, questions and answers today on various subjects. If you've got any thoughts, comments, questions of your own as we go through, do pop them in the comments and we'll see where we go. Jane is going to, let's pop this up on here to see, going to gather lots of yarrow and plantain for drying today before the council mow the grass verge. Excellent. Yes, I've got some yarrow. Mine in the garden is just about ready to pick because I've left it to dry on the plant. So all good. Good morning, Zenia. Yes, Eric's out in the sunshine. Pete is struggling with his new work computer, so he'll be very quiet today. Both of them will be very quiet today. So let's have a look at the first question. These were posed in the week to me. So let's put the first one up, which is, when repeating a spell incantation multiple times, and you misspeak a word or the word's order, does that reduce the effectiveness of the spell? No, absolutely not. The gods and the universe and the divine, they understand that we are just human and that we get things, you know, about tea sometimes. I've done it myself in spells. We've done it numerous times in ritual where we've gone the wrong way round or fallen over or said the wrong things or done it in the wrong order. We have not been struck down by lightning yet, touch wood. Nothing's gone awry. So no, Absolutely not. When you do it multiple times and you misspeak, it's just one of those things that happens, and the divine understand. So no, it shouldn't affect the effectiveness at all. So you should be absolutely fine with that one. Catch up with the comments. Good morning, Maharet. Christine, off to the dentist today. Filling fell out and tooth broke last night. Oh, not good, not good. Get that sorted, definitely. Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Melanie. So, questions and answers today. This is an interesting one. How to reconcile with meditation. This came from someone who really struggles with meditating, doesn't get on with it at all. It isn't going to be for everyone. It's like anything within the witchcraft world. There are subjects that you will get on with and others that you don't. There are areas that I love: herbs, magical food, candle magic. But there are areas that I'm not, so I don't tend to use so often. Usually the kind of math stuff. Numerology isn't one of my areas. The Kabbalah isn't an area that I've really worked with much. So there will always be areas that you get on with, ones that you don't. I am trained in astral travel and lucid dreaming. I don't use it very often because not something that's ever kind of appealed to me. Meditation, although it seems to be a general thing, isn't going to, resonate with everybody. However, there are hints and tips and ways of doing it. There are some suggestions on my blog, actually, on my personal blog, on the Pathos Pagan blog. There are some hints and tips on how to work with meditation. I also wrote a book about it, obviously. So I think it's about finding a way that works for you. The same with most things. What works for some might not work for others. It's about finding a method of meditation that works for you. I think primarily you need to be comfortable, and you don't have to sit in the whole yoga bendy pretzel kind of shape, because that's quite, uncomfortable. I like to lay down when I'm meditating. Quite often I meditate at bedtime when I'm laying in bed. If I'm in my little witchy room, then I have an old quilt that I lay on the floor and a Shakti mat, and I lay on that to meditate. I like to meditate with earphones in. I find that with the little earphones in, just link it to my phone, kind of shuts out the rest of the world and any outside noises or interference. So having the earphones on for me really kind of narrows down the experience for me. So earphones I would recommend. But I mean, there are, you could just use speakers if you're listening to the music from your laptop or your computer. Go with what works for you. But comfort, I think, is the main thing. Also have a blanket handy. I have a blanket that a very dear friend crocheted for me, and that's my meditation blanket. I keep it as my meditation blanket. It's like a key, because when you've laid down or you're sitting down and you're still, your body temperature drops. So I put the blanket over me, A, to keep my body warm, but also because this is my meditation blanket. So it kind of tells my brain that that's what we're doing. We're meditating. If you like incense or oils, then something relaxing, put something relaxing on as well. And music as well. It doesn't have to, we talked about music in magic a couple of weeks ago. It doesn't have to be the plinky plonky lift music. Find something that you find meditative. It might take a few tries. It might take a bit of trial and error, but you need to find something that works for you. Because it works for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Christine says, one thing I teach with meditation is to stare at a candle flame. Very good idea. Close your eyes and keep the image of the candle in your mind's eye. If you lose it again, back to stare at the candle again, sooner or later you'll be meditating. We do that to teach visualization as well. But meditating with a focal point, because you don't have to close your eyes, meditating with a focal point works very well. Candle flame is really good. Something that draws your focus, a flower or a crystal. There are lots of crystals that will actually help you meditate. Find the crystal that you find calming and soothing and hold the crystal while you meditate, or look at the crystal while you meditate. It is really trial and error about finding something that works for you. I love sound baths, particularly gong sound baths. I love the feeling that the gong sound gives as it washes over you. Have been to several gong bath sessions, but you can recreate it, not quite as well, but you can recreate it at home. I put a speaker at my feet and I play music from YouTube or Spotify that is gong sound bath, and I play it through the speaker so that the sound comes from my feet and washes up over my body. That works for me. Something else to try. Good morning, Lani. Good morning, N. Brooks. Good morning, Sue. Jackie says, if you count your breath, 4 in, hold for 4, and release your breath at 4. That way you close off your brain to anything else while you're counting. There are lots of different breathing techniques that you can try. They are in my meditation book as well. There are lots of different yoga and relaxation type breathing patterns that you can try. That will help you get into that meditative state. Counting down, also counting down from 10 down to 1 also works quite well as well. Jenny suggests for people who struggle with passive forms of meditation, might want to try Labyrinth meditation is good as well. Labyrinth or a spiral, following round. If you haven't actually got one that you can walk around, you can visualize one. You can draw one on a piece of paper and follow it around with your finger. There are lots of different suggestions. There are lots of different ways. I say I've written a couple of blogs and there's lots of suggestions in the book, but it really is a way of finding a way that works for you. Daydreaming. Most of us will at some point daydream. That's just a form of meditation as well. Doing something repetitive, if you knit or you crochet or you sew, that's a form, that's a repetitive form that can actually get you into a kind of meditative state. It is about thinking a little bit out of the box sometimes about different ways and different types of meditation. There are lots of different types. Christine loves gong baths so much. Yeah, they are fantastic, aren't they? Jackie says the breathing slows your heart rate and really helps. Yes, and again, there are different ways of doing it. So do research breathing patterns for meditation. Maharet says, I have to move with meditation. Yes, if I try to sit still, I get absolutely nowhere. Walking is good. Is walking good? Slow and moderate movement like stretching, Tai Chi works for me too. Yoga is very good as well. But just walking is really good. Make sure you're not on a busy road. You need to be walking somewhere safe so that you don't step out in front of cars and things. But walking is very good. It's repetitive. It's getting that pace going that is one after another so that you get that meditative beat, if you like. Zenius says, great idea using speakers at your feet. I love Tibetan bowls, sound bars. I love the gongs. I'm not so keen on the crystal bowls. I think they are different sounds for different people. I think you have to find one that resonates with you. Some of the crystal bowls I find great on me rather than soothing. So it is about finding also the music or the sound that works for you. Nature sounds really good as well. Raining, storms, the ocean. I love listening to the ocean to meditate to. Work through different types and different things. You don't have to have this idea of sitting in a pretzel shape meditating for an hour. Meditating for 5 minutes is absolutely fine. I think we have this idea that we have to be some kind of Tibetan monk and sit there for hours on end. Just a 5-minute meditation is absolutely fine. Don't stress yourself out about it, really. Zenius says labyrinth meditations are great. Also, mindful walking's good. Yep. For example, in a park or a forest, walking and focus on every step and the impressions of nature. It's that repetitive, isn't it? It's that thing. Jane says Tai Chi is meditation with movement. Absolutely. And Brooks says, I struggle as I start making lists in my head of things I need to do, and I'm not sure that's the goal. Mind monkeys. I think that takes a bit of practice. Ideas and thoughts and shopping lists and things pop into your head. I think there are two ways to deal with it. One is to just acknowledge that it's there, release it and let it go. Actually, there's probably three. Release it, let it go. Two is to just, before you start meditating, write things down that come into your head so that you've got them out of your head and you've written them down and you can come back to them later. The third way is to go with it. If your mind is telling you to run through your shopping list, then let it run through the shopping list. In its own way, can be quite meditative. It has to work for you. It is either meditation is very, very personal. Karen, love gongs and Tibetan bowls and drums, can't bear the crystal bowls. Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Jackie suggests a shower. Shower is a brilliant way of meditating, allowing the water to just wash over you. N. Brooks says, or I fall asleep. Falling asleep once you're meditating is fine. It's done its job. It's relaxed you. Yeah, Jackie says, love chilling in the shower and just let the water wash away your stress. Absolutely. Christine's just sitting under a tree. You can put your back against a tree trunk and let the tree's energy help you meditate too. Zenius says, as you said, getting lost in listening to favorite music is kind of meditative. Yes, and again, it doesn't have to be that blinky blonky music. Pick your favorite tune, and if you just sit there for the length of the tune, running the song words through your head and nothing else, then you're in a meditative state. So it's all good. It's all good. Definitely. Lani says, I sit on the evening before bed and meditate 5 to 10 minutes to help calm my mind before going to sleep. Otherwise, my brain struggles to shut down. I like to meditate before bedtime. Yeah, it does help. Let's get some of these up because it's easier to read. Went to see the opera Ada in Verona in an amphitheatre. Big Viking-looking lady came and rubbed a big drumstick round and round a huge gong till the place was filled with sound. It was amazing. Oh, I bet it was. I bet that was fantastic. Willow Moon says, walking or doing some sort of automatic movement helps you keep one foot in this world and one in the other. Balance between the two so you have more control. It's walking. Anything that's repetitive, anything that does that repetitive action is really good for helping you meditate. Lou, I love guided meditations. I find if I'm told what to focus on or what to visualize on, it stops any wandering thoughts. Again, it's a personal thing. I work better with guided meditations. I find them much easier to follow than just listening to music or sound. Other than the gongs, if it's a gong sound bath, I do drift away. But some people hate guided meditations. So you've got to find something that works for you. And I think the voice of the person reading the guided meditation makes a difference too. You need to find a voice that resonates with you. But guided meditations are really good as well. There's all sorts. I think it's a case of trying it all and seeing what works for you. There are lists. I say I've written a couple of blogs about meditation. There's Eric adding his to it. Shush, go and meditate. And meditation is very personal. So it is about finding a way that works for you. But have a look at the couple of blogs that I've written. If you would like to buy my book, obviously, that's fab. But raining cats and bobbins. Hello. Hi, Gemma. I have to time my meditations when my cat is napping when I get home from work. Otherwise, she yells at me. Yes, you have to find a space where you're not going to be disturbed by, let's let the book through, by animals, children, all kinds. Yes, it's about finding a space where you're not going to be disturbed as well. But again, it only has to be 5-10 minutes. Doesn't have to be hours and hours. Karen says, Christopher Penzak's voice sends me off into meditation. Yes, his voice is very good. It is, it's finding out what works for you. Rachel bought Hi Rachel, bought a beautiful meditation cushion from Avalon Cloaks, and I use it to sit and stroke my rabbit Luna. She loves to sit next to me. We both meditate. Fantastic. That's a key, isn't it? It's a bit like my meditation blanket. If you've got something that tells your brain that it's time to meditate, meditation cushion, meditation blanket, I think that helps set you in the frame of mind. It is about setting the scene as well, I think, whether that is sound, scent, touch, whatever works for you. Jenny has put up a link. If anyone wants to check out where a labyrinth is local to them, this might be useful. I have 3 local to me. Thank you, Jenny. That's very useful. Labyrinth maze. Fantastic. Thank you. Hi, Maria. Jane says, hanging something nice on the wardrobe opposite the bed, like a picture or a newly knitted scrappy sock when I'm winding down before sleep, and then just staring at it works for me. Pictures work very well, particularly if they are something like a scene, a woodland scene or a field scene, something that you can, again, like the candle flame, focus on, something that you can focus on or even lose yourself in. When I was first learning the tarot, I would meditate with each tarot card, and I would literally put the tarot card in front of me and meditate into the picture and go off wandering around. You can do the same with crystals. Find a nice crystal that's got lots of inclusions and lumps and bumps, and you can meditate by wandering into the crystal. It's about having a focus, I think. Christine says, when I meditate, I play Reiki music. My dogs always come and lay down with me too. Calms the house down, bless you. Excellent. It is about finding what works for you. Definitely. So, yeah. Couple of blogs on it. There is a book on it, obviously. Do have a look. But meditation is very personal, and I think it is about finding a way that works for you. Another interesting question. What if your spells aren't working? Jane loves the idea of wandering into tarot cards. It's part of how I began to learn them, by wandering into the scene. I do it with tarot and oracle cards. It can, even if you know all about tarot cards and you draw your card of the day and you're not sure what it means, you can meditate by stepping into the picture and getting a bit of insight. Or perhaps I'm just mad, I don't know. I suspect it's the latter. Anyway, what if your spells aren't working? Again, I have written a blog about this. There are a few reasons why your spells might not be working. It is in the Spells and Charms book. I feel like a sales ad today, but I have written a lot of blogs and things with the information in. But there are numerous reasons why your spells might not be working. I think the main one is probably that the universe doesn't want it to work. What you want and what you need aren't necessarily the same two things. The universe always, in my experience, has other ideas, and you have to go with the flow. So I think you have to ask yourself what your intent really is behind that spell. What did you really mean? Why do you really want it to happen? Maria suggests, yep, the intent should be 100% for them to work. Often they do what they want. Yeah. Your intent. If your will and your intent aren't really there, if you're half-hearted with the energy that you put into that spell, it's not going to work anyway. You have to really, really want it and really want it to happen. And I think probably want it to happen for the right reasons as well. So you have to put that energy into it. Wording comes into it sometimes, or quite a lot of time really, because spells do have a habit of going off in unexpected directions. So your spell may have worked, but it might not have worked in the way that you expected it to. Because quite often, again, the universe steps in. Or you've not perhaps worded your spell exactly right, or you've left it too open, or you've narrowed it down too much. Spells are complicated. There is a whole craft to working spells. And sometimes your wording can be, the one I usually use is, you work a spell to bring lots of money your way. I want to bring lots of money into my world. But what could actually happen is that someone dies and leaves you an inheritance, which is great from the point of view that your spell worked to bring you lots of money, but someone had to die to do it. I know that's quite a drastic example, but it's an easy one to picture. So I think you have to be quite specific with things and understand that spells don't always work the way that we intend them to. And the timing. If you haven't put a time frame on your spell, some of them take a long time to work. Some of them happen quite quickly, but some of them take a long time to work. Some of them might take, a whole moon cycle. Some of them might take several months. Some of them might take a year. Some of them might take longer. It depends on the spell and the intent and the way that the universe works. So if you haven't actually put a time frame on your spell, it might be that the spell is working, but it's just doing it slowly. And it might be that your spell is completely unrealistic. If you've worked a spell to ask that you can marry a prince, then the likelihood of it happening is probably fairly slim. And particularly with healing spells, if you are sending out healing spells and working healing for others, it might be that the universe has other ideas. Healing spells are quite tricky. You need to ask, if you're doing healing spells for others, you need to ask them if they would like you to send healing, because some of them might not. And the universe may have other plans. You're dealing with a lot of bigger things here. So I would go back over them, keep a really detailed record of when you worked it, what date, what moon phase, what you used, how you used it, what wording you used, and then have a think about what's happened in your life since then, and see if you can draw any lines back to the spell and see if it did work, but perhaps not in the way that you thought it would. Or tweak the spell, and sort of take it. Perhaps you used something that didn't quite work, or perhaps you used something that you're not familiar with. Lots and lots of different reasons for it. You need to go back and analyze your spell and look at the bigger picture and see if it did affect other things. It is not as straightforward as some people think with spells. Zenius says, I did Wandering into Tarot Cards during a tarot course. Very interesting what else one can find in that little world. Well, they are little scenarios, aren't they? Each one is a little scenario. Sophia, nice glasses. Thank you. I need them to see. Good morning, Diane. It's spells. A difficult area to work with, but see if you can narrow it down. Another interesting question now. Let's just have a quick drink. A very basic question. Why would secrecy about witchcraft be important? I have only read The Real Witch's Handbook by Kate West. Good books. She writes good books. I loved it, but there were several references to keeping the craft secret. And it hasn't actually done the whole sentence there, so I will continue reading it. And not advertising it by keeping a permanent altar, which I didn't understand. There was no explanation as to why it might be important. Is secrecy a thing, or is it just down to how private an individual likes to be with their beliefs? I think there are several reasons for this. A lot of it dates back to when Wicca was first conceived, back in the 40s-ish. Covens then were very private. They were secret groups. You only talked about the magic that was worked within the coven and not outside. Everything was kept very secret to each specific coven and each lineage. Everything was worked undercover, really. You didn't share what you were doing with anyone outside of the coven. I suspect in part it was to do with the witchcraft laws. It was illegal to be a witch, particularly in the UK, until quite recently, actually, in our modern times. So there would have been that. I think perhaps as well, it probably stems back. The Victorians loved the occult and they loved secret societies. Being part of a secret magic society was the height of fashion in Victorian times. But I think perhaps with the emergence of Wicca, it was that things were kept secret. That's just how it worked. The magic and the secrets of it weren't for anybody outside. You had to be brought in by someone, into the coven by someone that knew you, trusted you, and would speak for you. And so everything was kept within that kind of coven. I think in part it was because people within the coven, they wanted to keep their magic secret to themselves. But yeah, it would have been because, you know, the practicing witchcraft was illegal for a long time. I also think perhaps modern times, once people started writing books, and the first witchcraft books were written as fiction. But I think with the internet, with media, things have opened up a huge amount, obviously. But I also think with there's a lot of different witchcraft pathways now. Wicca is not the only one to follow. My original training was in Wicca, but there are so many different witchcraft pathways now, and there's so much media, and there's so much internet, and there's so much access to all of these books and sites. And what I'm doing today, talking to anybody, I think it's a good thing. I think it is a really good thing. When I first started learning witchcraft 30 years ago, there was no internet. I had to get hold of books from bookstores, and that was really difficult because there weren't many out there even then. So I think we are in a better place now because sharing, you learn from each other, and you know, the craft of witchcraft and the pathway, pagan pathway, can help people. It certainly helped me, changed my life completely. So I think it's brilliant that we are now open to it all. But yes, the secrecy, I think, was to do with witchcraft laws because it was illegal originally. I think was to do with Wicca originally being quite a secret craft and keeping everything between your own covens. There are still covens now that don't publicize what they teach and how they work. They keep everything very close to themselves, and that's, you know, that's how it works for some covens. The coven I run online is a teaching coven, so, you know, we're quite open about it. But again, it's personal choice, what works you, what works for another. There's also the fact that some people don't want to be out of the closet or can't be out of the closet because of your family, your workplace, your colleagues, your friends. A lot of them may not understand your pathway, so you have to keep in the closet. So secrecy is a huge thing, particularly if you're living in a house with other people that aren't pagan and don't understand it. You would have to keep things hidden, and I think there's a lot of people still like that now. Not me, because obviously I'm out here. Christine says, yes, secrecy was also due to the fact that you could be arrested. You could, and in some countries you probably still can. Not up on it all. Good morning, John. Denise, have to keep the fact on which private, because my job, lots of people do. Lots of people do. Maria is correct. Doesn't really matter who doesn't know, you know, and that's the important part. It is your choice, and actually coming out of the closet can be quite difficult. It can be difficult. I've personally not experienced any horrible reactions. I've not experienced any nastiness. I have experienced disbelief and laughter. I was in a newspaper article quite a few years ago now, a local newspaper article from my local tattoo shop, actually, and I sort of had to explain that most of my tattoos are to do with witchcraft. And I got recognised in the school playground when I was picking up my kids, and someone there did the whole, oh, you're going to turn me into a frog, ha, ha, ha. You know, oh, how many times have I heard that? And they thought it was funny. And my children, their friends, didn't believe it because of Disney, you know, witches were in Disney. So I haven't experienced the nasty side of it, thankfully, but I know a lot of people have, and that's why a lot of people do keep it secret. So various reasons. Melanie, yes. Family no, but my in-laws don't. They're devout Catholic. Yes, it's if you are in a situation like that with in-laws or family and friends, sometimes it can be difficult. So there are various reasons for keeping it secret. And it has to be personal choice, really. It's down to you. Good morning, Obsidian. And I saw a question there from Maria. I had got your question down, Maria, about how to really stop troublesome people. Zenius said, I also experienced more mockery and laughter rather than people were scared. In Germany, people basically think that a witch is a fantasy figure. That's it, isn't it? It's the lack of knowledge again, isn't it? A lot of people do, with thanks to Hollywood and Disney, people think the witches aren't actually real. So, yeah, you do get a lot of mockery with it as well. So there are various reasons for keeping it secret. So Maria says, what would, in your opinion, be the next step from a freezer spell if one feels it's not working? Oh, so many answers to that in my head that are illegal. I would suggest a binding. I would suggest a binding for that, Maria. That's the next step. Bindings don't actually hurt people, but they will and should stop them from hurting others. They are a kind of protection type spell. I have got a couple of blogs on binding as well. I think they're over on the Pathos blog. It is about binding the person to stop them from doing what they're doing that's causing harm. And they are straightforward to do. I tend to use sellotape in my binding spells because it's good and sticky and binds them nice and tight. You don't actually bind the person, the actual person. You need a puppet or an image of them and you bind that. So yes, yeah, you could do it for real, but you might get arrested. So binding would be my next stop from a freezer spell. If you are really, really desperate and if it is within your remit, then obviously there are curses and hexes, but only you can decide whether you want to walk down that route, because there are, as with any magical workings, there are consequences. But yes, from that point of view, from that, I would go for a binding because it's not in the same realm as curses and hexes, but it's the next step up from a freezer spell. So hopefully that has helped. Let me find there we go. Jenny has put a comment there. Eliphas Levi, I propose that the rule of the mages, to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. Yes, it's the witch's pyramid, isn't it? I know some people believe that sharing your spell work dilutes the impact. Interesting, isn't it? Yes. If you are looking at Wicca, this is from Wicca. It's the witch's pyramid. It's the 4 elements: to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent. There is the idea as well that when you're working a spell, you shouldn't share it with anybody. You work the spell, you forget about it, you don't talk about it. For me, that would be difficult because as a teacher, I want to share my spell work with people so that you know how I do it and it might help others to learn. So I don't subscribe to that one, I must admit, from spell working, because I have shared a lot of my spell working on the internet and in my books, and there's never been any problem with any of them. But some do. And I think you have to trust your intuition on that. If you work a spell and you think that it needs to be kept secret, then trust your intuition. There are some spells that you might feel, that's it, you've done it, you need to forget all about it. There are some spells that you'll need to keep coming back to recharge. And you might like to share some spells on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. Trust your intuition on that one, definitely. Maria might do it for you. Maria, if I have to come and bail you out because you bound someone, give me a call. Zenius says, I also don't talk about my spells that I have in work because of the reasons the witch's pyramid teaches, but I talk about general witchy stuff and when I did spells that worked after they've worked, but not before the result has occurred. Yes, that's very interesting, Zenia. Yeah, good way of looking at it. talk about the spells afterwards once they've worked. It has to be personal choice, and it is. That's following the witch's pyramid, and it has to be your own pathway, absolutely your own decision. Jane says, do you think a spell might work more strongly if you ask other witches to do it with you remotely as a joint effort? I ask a witch friend to do spells in tandem with me if it's important. She kindly does, and the results are always good. I think you've answered your own question there, Jane. I think it depends. If you've got a witch friend that's used to working in tandem with you, then that's brilliant. If you are part of a coven and you're all in sync with each other, you're all in line with each other, then your energies are going to be aligned and you're all going to have the same goal in mind. I think it's difficult when it comes to and there are lots of them, where people have been asked to send healing energy or work a spell across the internet together, or even a curse I've seen towards politicians and various other things. I think, unfortunately, everyone has their own agenda. And if you are trying to work a spell with someone you don't know, or people that you don't know, you're all going to have slightly different energies, slightly different agendas. And in my own opinion, it's going to go a little bit awry. There is a story of a coven of witches from the New Forest that worked a spell during the war. And it worked. It worked. But they're a coven and they work together, and they'd worked together for a long time, and they were all in sync. And as Jane says, with your friend there, you're obviously in sync with each other, and you've obviously got the same goals and the same energies to put towards it, which is brilliant. I would work spells with the Kitchen Witch gang because we're all in sync, we're all in energy with each other. But if it is a larger group of people and you don't know them all, I think it can be everyone's got their own agenda. And I think that perhaps if it is a larger group, the energies won't align. But that's only my own opinion. Maria says, I found that if attempting to create a spell for someone else and they don't have the same attitude for the outcome of that spell, it's a waste of time and effort. I think creating spells for other people are always difficult. I get a lot of emails from people saying, do you cast spells? Will you cast a spell for me? I will pay you lots of money. I never do that. Never cast spells for other people. What I do is help them to cast their own spell. I think if you are working the spell yourself, then it's going to have a far better outcome. That's just the way that I think. That's the way that I work. My own opinion. It's entirely up to you. I know there are lots of people that work spells for others, and if it works, then brilliant. If you are looking for spell working and you look online and someone wants to charge lots of money, don't do it. Message me. I will help you do it. That's just how I roll, really. I think anybody that works a spell, even if you're not used to it, if you work a simple spell with some help, it's going to have a better outcome than paying someone lots of money to work it for you. So that was that question. Let's have a look at this. Is an interesting one. Have vaguely heard of Hoodoo Magic. Would love to understand a bit more of its origins and what is in relation to what we are practicing here. Here, as in at Kitchen Witch, general witchcraft. I do work with Hoodoo. I have written a book about Hoodoo. Are you bored with hearing that yet? I realised a long time ago that what I was working, folk magic. It's what a lot of traditional and general witches work with, is folk magic. So any sympathetic magic, poppets, witch bottles, spell pouches, candle magic, it's a lot of it draws on folk magic. And I realised I was reading a book about hoodoo, which has African slave origins, but they weren't the only slaves. there were European slaves as well. And there is a huge influence on hoodoo, which is a magical practice, not a religion. There's a huge influence from European folk magic on it as well. So there's big crossovers in the type of magic that's worked. So I actually see hoodoo basically as folk magic, which is really what it is. Hoodoo is a magical practice, tends to be worked with by Santeria, Yoruban. You'll hear it a lot in New Orleans and Salem and that kind of area. It does tend to be worked by root workers who probably don't actually call it hoodoo at all. It is perhaps raw, a lot rawer than a lot of the magic that perhaps European, American, English witches, Wiccans work. There's a lot of, there's no reed, you know, there's no kind of, I'm not going to curse or hex. There are curses and hexes in hoodoo, but it does use poppets, it does use spell pouches, it does use powders. Doesn't really tend to use crystals in any magical workings, but there are candle spells and jar spells. So it is about using herbs and plants. There's a lot of bodily fluids used in it. There's a whole area that deals with keeping a man faithful, keeping your woman faithful, drawing a certain person to you using bodily fluids and herbs and spells. There are curses, war bottles, where you make a witch's bottle and throw it on the doorstep of the person that you want to be harmed. So it's a huge area, but hoodoo is essentially folk magic based on African slaves, but also with a huge European folk magic influence as well. There's an awful lot of crossovers. You will see poppets, you will see spell pouches. There's a lot of different names, and they do use particular ingredients such as High John the Conqueror root and things like that. It is a different area, but you can see a lot of the correspondences with the magic that we as witches work. It is a fascinating subject. So if you are interested in it, do have a look, but you will find that it works a lot in the ways that we work when working magic. Right, Kath says, I've seen a lot of concern re cultural appropriation of hoodoo from people of colour. Yes, I mean, hoodoo is a magical practice. It is often linked to American Africans, but you have to look into it. And if you do your research, you will see that it has a huge amount of European influence. It is a magical practice. If you're looking at a bigger scale, the root workers do follow a religion of sorts as well. You will find that they quote the Psalms or prayers when they're working the magic as well. But bear in mind that Psalms are older than Christianity. There is a fantastic book by Taryn S. about Psalms in magic. If you want to look at that, it's a fantastic read. But it is hoodoo. It's a magical practice. It works with poppets. It works with witch bottles. It works with spell pouches, all of which you can find across Europe. You can probably find across the world, to be honest. There are so many crossovers. So, yeah, be a bit flexible on that. Sorry, trying to get to these questions here. Going to be submitting my application for a master's degree today. What would you suggest to give it a little magical oomph? Anything that is fiery, anything that is hot and fiery, chili, ginger. My go-to would be cinnamon. It's hot and fiery, and cinnamon's really good for success. So I would actually work a little bit of magic with some cinnamon, whether you drink a hot cinnamon drink or whether you print out your master's degree and sprinkle it with cinnamon or roll it up around a cinnamon stick and place it on your altar. Anything that's fiery, Jenny. But your positive energy coming your way, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. Maria says, Bloody Mary is a voodoo priestess who is white and also uses hoodoo. I think we get a bit hung up about all this stuff, don't we? Yes, Tara Ness that wrote the book about Psalms, she works with Hoodoo. Voodoo obviously is a religion, but I think there's a training involved in Voodoo and Santeria and Yoruba, like there is with anything else. You need to be trained by the person that's knowledgeable in it. So yeah, just be mindful. Just be mindful. Karen says, which is your favorite book that you have written? Oh. Do you know, I think I like Witchcraft into the Wilds best. It is how I work my magic. It is working with things that nature provides. There aren't even any crystals in it. It's working with leaves and plants and stones and pebbles. It is just working with what nature provides for you. So it is really how I work generally in a book. And there's, there's bits of me obviously in all of my books, and I love each one of them as I'm writing it. But yeah, I think Witchcraft in the Wilds is one of my favorites. Zenius says, in Hoodoo, I also find the use of dirt interesting. Not only graveyard dirt, but also collecting dirt from the court for court case spells, the bank for money and such. Yeah, but you'll also find that, lots of spells work with dirt and graveyard dirt, but that is a huge part of Hoodoo. There are crossovers. There's huge crossovers, and there's such an influence from European side of things. But it is fascinating. Yeah, working with graveyard dirt and dirt of all kinds is it's sympathetic magic, which we all work with. Let's see what else we got here. Christine says, I love your Hoodoo book. I get a lot of spell ideas from it. Brilliant book. Pay me the $5 later. Pay more than $5. Jane says, hello, we have a dog here. Witch bottles often contain bodily fluids, so are they leaning towards Hoodoo? You will find witch bottles in Hoodoo, but of course, witch bottles have been found in England, buried in the walls of houses from hundreds of years ago. So there's that crossover, which they use jar magic, jar spells and bottle spells in Hoodoo that contain bodily fluids. They use poppets. Poppets date back to the ancient Egyptians, but poppets have been found again buried in chimneys in England, and they're used in Hoodoo as well. There's so many crossovers that I don't think anybody can really claim this is mine, you can't use it, because there are so many crossovers. It's just about being mindful of practicing and following, certain pathways. So yes, they're not leaning towards Hoodoo because, I think that's probably a lot older. But there are crossovers, definitely. Kath says that's also used in European folk magic. Yeah, all of it is. There are crossovers all across. And I say the slaves weren't just African, they were European slaves as well. So it's all a bit of a mishmash. Get the words right. Oh, yes, Jane has suggested mustard seeds, Jenny. Yep, they'd work really well too. Maria still has sulfur packet in the box in the garden, too scared to use it. To use. Sulfur is an interesting ingredient, that's for sure. The dog's eating something. I don't know what he's eating. Will you write a book about the old names for herbs? They're in my magical herbs book, in the magical plants and herbs book, I think it is. There's a list of all the old names, like bat's wing and eye of newt and things like that. There is a list of them all in there. Fascinating, isn't it? That's what they used to call them. It sounds better as, eye of newt and wing of bat, doesn't it? But they're actually names just for different plants. So that's what we used to call them. Much better than calling it just, basil or something. This is another interesting one here. We'll just do this, get this computer right. That one. How do you differentiate between your subconscious and voices and visions coming from magical sources or spirit? Big question. Again, I think a lot of personal experience comes into this. Everyone will be slightly different. I think a lot of it is experience, and I think a lot of it is learning to trust your intuition. So obviously our subconscious does tell us lots of things. It does speak to us, and over the years you learn to trust your gut feeling. So you learn to trust your intuition. It won't let you down. On the times when I have ignored that little voice in my head, that little gut reaction, then it's gone horribly pear-shaped. So I have learnt to try and trust that. You get that feeling, don't you? If it feels hinky, you know that you shouldn't be doing it. If it feels right, trust it and go with it. And I think a lot of that is to do with your subconscious, obviously. When it comes to listening to deity, I think it feels a little bit different. It does feel different when you're working with spirit as well. When I'm working with spirit work, with mediumship, i.e. talking to the dead, those that have passed over, for me, I feel a presence in the room, as if a person, not a solid person, but you get that feeling that there's a person standing with you. And in fact, when you first start mediumship training, it can be quite overwhelming because sometimes they all come in. And you have like, can you form an orderly queue? But when I'm dealing with an actual spirit, someone that's passed over, I get the feeling that there is actually a person there. I don't necessarily get full sentences or hold full conversations with the spirit world. Quite often they will just show me an image or a word. And I think you'll find that with a lot of mediumships, you will hear them say, the mediums will say, my guide is showing me this, or so-and-so is showing me this. So quite often they show an image or a picture of something or just a word, and you have to kind of translate that. But I get the feeling that there is an actual being there. So that's when I work with spirit. When I work with deity, it's more like being surrounded. It's more like being in a safe bubble. I get a feeling of everything around me, an energy around me. And I can have a conversation with them. Is it my subconscious with both of these? Who am I to say, eh? Whether spirit tap into your subconscious, whether deity tap into your subconscious. Don't have the answers to that one. But I trust, and I trust my intuition. We were talking about this with the girls the other day, and one of the girls said, spirit or the divine will never ask you to do something that you wouldn't normally do. So they wouldn't ask you to do something. They wouldn't ask you to shoot someone unless that's what you normally do. They wouldn't ask you to do something like that. They will guide you in your own pathway, and sometimes they might push you a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it will always be something within the realms of sensible possibilities. But for me, it's two different feelings. With the spirit, passed over spirits, I actually feel like there's a person there. Sometimes I get faint images, but generally I just get the feeling that the person's there. With deity, it's kind of an all-encompassing energy, and I can have a proper conversation with deity. With spirit world, it's often just images or odd words. But I think it's down to you and how you work, and trusting your own intuition. And I think that comes with experience, is learning to trust your intuition and which is which. Hi, Sue. Sue broke her ankle yesterday. What on earth were you doing? Oh no. Oh, I hope yes, take care today, please, and going forward. We need that mended very quickly. Christine has that book. It's a brilliant book. Tenner for that one. Price is going up, Christine. Let's get rid of that one. And then we can get some of these up. Jane says, the crossovers are amazing. They date back to a time when we couldn't know by communication, only by a sort of collective consciousness. I think it is. When you go back through time and ages, it makes sense. You know, people would have used, when they worked magic or wanted something to happen, they would have used whatever they had to hand. I've been reading up about the Roman baths. There were all sorts of offerings thrown into the waters to their deity, to Sulis mainly. They were writing, the rich people threw in silver coins. The poor people wrote on pieces of pewter and threw that in. A lot of them were asking, please curse whoever stole my coat, kind of thing. But similar things to we do now when we're writing petitions and working magic and giving offerings. It is. There's so many crossovers. Definitely. I think that's what makes it difficult when people try and claim things. There's so many crossovers across the world. Anyway, Christine, I was told if you hear the voice inside your head, you're a medium. But if you hear voices outside your head, either go to the doctor or to a priest. I'm laughing, but actually, yes. Definitely. If you are hearing actual voices outside of your head, definitely go and see someone. Definitely. Jane says, my garden's full of valerian, so I didn't need to traipse the cemetery to get real dirt. There are different ideas of substitutions for graveyard dirt. I think these days it's very difficult to get real graveyard dirt because you are supposed to dig it from quite deep below the surface. And I think digging in a cemetery these days, you're liable to get arrested. I suggest if you want to use graveyard dirt, take it from the gateway of the cemetery. Just dig up a little bit of earth by the gateway, because a gateway is an in-between place as well. So it works really well from that point of view, but it's also within the cemetery. So, and a lot easier to do without getting arrested. Lou, do any of your books cover spirits and mediumship? They don't actually. No, it's not something that I've particularly written about. Something I'd love to learn more about, but struggle to find a trusted resource. I am trained. I have had proper mediumship training. It is an area that I have worked with. We do cover it in a lesson at the school. But no, interestingly, I haven't written about it because I think it's not something I work with professionally, if that makes sense. I'll look out some resources for you, Lou, and I'll post them in the comments. Christine says, the vicar's been wondering who's been taking all the dirt. I think it is. I think it's a different world these days, so you have to be careful. And there's a whole load of things that you need to do before taking graveyard dirt. You need to get to know the person that's in the grave. You want to be sure who you're taking it from. You do not want to be taking graveyard dirt from the grave of someone who did not lead a particularly good life. So you need to connect. You need to leave specific offerings. You need to dig particularly, depth and stuff. So it's a whole world of hassle. So for graveyard dirt, if you really want it, I would suggest collect it from the gateways to the cemetery. That would be my suggestion anyway. So loads of lovely questions today. Thank you very much. I will post any links in the comments to useful things that I have talked about. There are blog posts and things that have covered some of these subjects. Real mix today and really interesting. So thank you all for joining me and for all of your fascinating questions and your comments and your input as usual. You guys absolutely rock. It is a blast talking to you on a Friday morning. So thank you all. Next week I am talking, I know the hour did go fast, Jane, didn't it? We're an hour and 4 minutes nearly now. Oh, that's interesting. Nettie says, in our graveyard, there's always a big pile of dirt where they're working. Is it okay to use that? Yes, just check that it's not been dug from a grave, if that makes sense, because you need to know the energy of the person that was in that grave. A lot easier to collect. Oh, it is bank holiday here too, isn't it? Thank you, everyone. I will be talking about altars next week. The lovely Lani has asked me to talk about different altars, what to put on them, how to work with them, and that kind of thing. So that's next week's sorted. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend. Don't get arrested for binding or digging up graveyard dirt. And I will see you all next week.